Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where the Ravens made a trade, so we decided to do an emergency pod. I can't remember, did we do an emergency pod for, I know we did one for Peters. Did we do one for Ngakoue?
Oh, man.
I'm sure we did.
Could easily go back and check. But yeah, Marcus Peters was, if I'm not mistaken, the original emergency pod.
It was. I remember it vividly. Yeah. Do you remember where you were when you got the text that we're doing an emergency pod? I do.
Yeah, I actually do. Yeah, I was at a church event my mom wanted me to help out with, and I got the text and I was like, oh yeah, I can be on when I get home. Yeah, I'll be home at this time. We'll do it then. So
yeah, I was walking the streets of Silver Spring.
I don't know if I remember where I was. I'm trying to look up, see when was the last time we had one. I feel like it's been a while.
Yeah,
probably wasn't since Ngakoue. I mean, because in 2021. I didn't really make a splash trade because of the injuries.
I think we did actually in line. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That one was within the cadence.
Earl Thomas getting cut. Looks like that was an emergency pod.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Alec put the little siren emojis in there.
Fantastic. Well, we got Diontae Johnson. We sent over next year's 5th round pick. They're sending over their 6th round pick. And also consider that if he signs for like $5 million plus, we'll get a 6th round comp pick as well, which seems reasonable given his production. We were talking about it right before, but if you use the JJ points and you assume the 6th round pick, it's surplus value. So they clearly just want to get rid of him. They're covering a decent amount of his salary, $600,000 on our cap this year, which is basically nothing. So I guess we'll go around the horn about your excitement levels around this pickup. I'm quite keen on it. I think this is great. I mentioned, I think, on the show that I wanted a little bit more depth at wide receiver, and now we have it.
I'm ecstatic. Like you said, there's so many ways that this trade is of value to the Ravens. And we always, as a fan base, every year, we want more pass catchers for Lamar. And look, I get it. In a vacuum, would I have rather had Amari Cooper or DeAndre Hopkins? Absolutely. But we know Cooper was never going to get traded to the Ravens. The Browns weren't going to trade with the Ravens for that. Hopkins, the Chiefs got him. Ravens didn't. I think that he would have been fit more of a need, another red zone guy. But I mean, Johnson, it seems to me, and maybe it's just been what I've seen, I think the fan base reaction is a little tepid to this move. And maybe it's because this guy was a Steeler for so long. Maybe it's because, he was stuck in Carolina and had some really poor games when Bryce Young was throwing him uncatchable balls, and had some good games when competent NFL quarterback Andy Dalton was throwing him the ball. But look, I mean, Zay Flowers is a number one target in this offense. I think we've seen enough of this offense to see that Zay has become the guy. He's tied for 10th in the league in targets. He's a little further down yards per game, 20th, but still number one wide receiver production. Mark Andrews is getting his looks as well. And then outside of that, Bateman's still inconsistent, but is showing promise. And Aguilar is dependable, but you want someone better than that. And that's what Diontae is. It looks to me like he's going to be number 3 receiving target in this offense, maybe number 4, maybe Likely's ahead of him. And it's just another guy, another playmaker for Lamar to throw to. And look, I see nothing but positive from this move.
Yeah, I think given the value, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I guess the two, I won't call them counterpoints, but 2 things I feel like that this move highlighted for me. One, Tez Walker not ready. I feel like we kind of got those vibes just from him not really being active all that much. But I feel like this kind of solidifies it. At least in my mind, I don't really see him having a path to have that many snaps this year. Because we know Aguilar, we know Wallace, those guys can play. They're still going to be here. And if we're trading for Johnson, we're probably not going to have him inactive. So I think Walker, maybe he might go on IR at some point. Who knows? But I don't expect him to make a significant impact. And the only reason that kind of bums me out has nothing to do with Johnson, but I feel like kind of a separate conversation that this draft class this year is, the signs right now are the jury's out. I feel like we're getting snaps from the top 2 picks from this draft class, but everybody else, very little. which is a little concerning. But obviously, save judgment 4 years from now, and as we're going through it. But yeah, I mean, the only other thing probably to talk about is just like Diontae, like this year has been relatively healthy. Past couple of years, I think he's kind of had like little minor injuries here and there. So hopefully we're getting a healthy Diontae, but it is a little bit of a risk.
For sure. I thought that you were going to say my main concern is like they best not stop using Bateman at such a high clip. I really want to see Bateman retain his role. I feel like they will do that. I did watch every target, as Peter alluded to, from this year, the Bryce Young and the Dalton ones, and he plays all around. He plays in the slot. I probably would say 50% of the time, and the other 50% he's a boundary receiver. I would classify his yards per target as if they were more catchable, it would be much better this year. But if you look at his history, he has never been that high of a yards per target guy. And that's okay. I mean, he's still a good separator. And what I saw was an ability to get open on slants. I saw an ability to, have good timing on out routes. Seemed to have good comfort finding the soft spots and zones across the field. And I mean, this is the kind of receiver I think Lamar works well with. Particularly, I felt like he had a good, like I said, the good feel for zones and stuff. So we'll have to see, if he's able to do, the street ball thing. But I can't be too mad about it unless he starts eating into snaps. Because yeah, I think he's a little bit of an upgrade over Aguilar at this point in his career. And that's a good thing.
Huge upgrade over Aguilar. I think Diontae Johnson, in my opinion, is one of the more underrated receivers in this league. I think that part of it is, early in his career with Pittsburgh, he suffered a lot from drops. There were, the Steelers wanted him to take the next step. He never really did. But I mean, one thing I will say I am keen to see, and this might be unfair to the guy, right? You mentioned cutting into players' snaps. How is he going to handle coming to Baltimore? And like we said, he's going to be like the third, fourth, maybe fifth option in this passing attack. And pretty much his entire career, he's been groomed to be the guy. Even the couple games in Carolina,
yeah,
he was kind of 1A with Adam Thielen, but even there, when Thielen was healthy, he was getting more of the target share. So how is he going to, transition to that? Is he just going to be, thrilled to be out of the nowhere burger that Carolina is stuck in? Or is he going to be like, hey, where's the ball? Am I getting the ball? So that'll be interesting to see how that fits in from a team dynamic. And again, I don't know the guy. I have no idea what his mentality is going to be. Is he going to be like Aguilar seems to be a guy who's just like, I'm going to do whatever the team wants me to do. That's kind of the attitude he's brought to Baltimore, and he's fit really in with that attitude. Is it going to work that way with Diontae? So we'll see. Yeah. But I think you brought up a lot of things that he does well. And I think we're going to see that. And it's just going to be interesting. I think this offense, like we're seeing, there's some games it's going to be Bateman eating, some games it's Mark Andrews eating, some games it's Zay. And I think there'll be some Diontae games going forward, where they like the matchup and they're like, okay, hey, let's use this guy to exploit the defense. And then other weeks you might not even see him on the field terribly much. So, yeah, just another guy to throw defenses off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I feel like it'll be okay, right? I mean, I'm thinking back to some of those Steelers offenses, and even with Diontae, like I think he was always kind of like a 1B option, right? I mean, you play with Juju, you play with Claypool for when he had his season. Diontae
Singular
like
season.
Clearly. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, like a lot, lots of passing options there for the Steelers to go to and everything. So like, I feel like it wasn't like an Antonio Brown situation where like he's head and shoulders above everybody else. So yeah, I mean, I'm not super worried about it. I do feel like it's a classic Ravens move, though. I've always had in my head like the Ravens love to bring in players that always play really well against them, and I feel like Diontae like always would have some really nice games against us. So yeah, from that perspective, like I feel like it passes my sniff test. I'm like, yeah, this is a classic move. And again, for the trade value, like makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, he was basically free. It's crazy to me that this trade happened. We started having memes in the chat of like, other things you might be able to trade to Carolina for Clowney. I said a clown costume might be sufficient for Halloween.
PSL, yeah.
Yeah, but
Candy bar with a razor in it,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, here's a scooter. But I will say the other thing that's interesting about Diontae Johnson is he could be a punt and kick returner for us. He has experience of doing that in the past. Hardy has been a kind of a failed experiment, in my opinion. I know he's hurt or like had, glimmers of hurt going on. But yeah, I think we'll be able to use him in that role, and hopefully the Collier experience is over. I just saw that Keaton Mitchell was a full participant in practice this week. So I really hope that means he could be activated for this week because, I think he could be a dynamic person on kickoffs. That could be a role for him potentially. I know Hill's taking some of that responsibilities. And yeah, I think this is going to be a nice little juice to the offense in many regards. So hopefully he can take on the returner role though, because I think anything they can do to get Collier out of that role is important at this point because it sounds like even Harbaugh's getting fed up with his spatial awareness.
Yeah, I mean, like we're saying, just adding another guy into this mix. And look, I know the fan base, myself included, are some reactions to this. Well, where's the defensive move, right? It's like, great, our offense is number one in the league. Why do we need another receiver?
Yeah.
But this is a point. I can't remember if you brought this up on the pod or in our chats, Alec. I think you mentioned like the Ravens have an injury to I mean, God forbid, Zay Flowers or even Bateman. Before this, you're looking at an incredibly thin wide receiver group. Now, one thing I will say with Diontae that I think Ravens will have to keep an eye on. Chris, you're correct. He's played in every game. I think he was questionable for the game against Washington, but he did play. But as someone who has Diontae Johnson on a fantasy team due to a poor decisions he made with contracts in a contract league, I've been watching his health status pretty close this year, and he has been managing a hamstring injury dating back to training camp. He's hardly practiced with Carolina as a result of that, and then 2 weeks ago, a rib injury popped up as well. So while he's playing through these injuries, the hamstring thing in particular makes me a little worried after we saw what happened with Mike Evans. So hopefully the Ravens are able to manage this guy the same way Carolina was able to, and just be able to keep an eye on that and keep that managed. I don't know how serious that injury is. If so, that is one thing. So wide receiver health, Diontae hopefully can help out if we need him in that regard, but we got to make sure that he doesn't come here and is immediately, on the shelf.
Yeah.
Well, hey, the good news is, unlike your contract team, though, like $600K is a contract. Like, even if he is on there, like, I know the Ravens don't have much cap, but they could probably go out and maybe get somebody else.
You're never $600K away from signing a player in the NFL. So, yeah, I'm excited. So I can't wait to see him in this role. Hopefully, DeCosta has another trade or two up his sleeve, like you mentioned, Peter. The defensive side of the ball, defensive line, safety are two places I would be interested in reinforcements. Defensive line situation's dire, man. Pierce is on the IR as of today. Concussion, no practice for Urban. Jones looked like a shell of himself out there with the ankle injury. Sounds like they're going to try to keep rolling him out there, but until he gets fully healthy, I don't know how effective he'll be. And then Tulopu, I think, is back on the practice squad. And then Wormley's there. I don't know. I mentioned in the chat when I watched today the presser with Harbaugh, he said, I really like our guys. Our guys are going to step up. He said it really shortly and very he cut off the question. And I was like, oh, the trade's already in the works. Like they're trading for somebody. There's no way. these are going to be the guys. So I have a hunch that something's going on because of the way he answered the question.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, it's like you said, and you've been talking about this for weeks, that defensive line is quickly becoming a thing. That the Ravens, and they're struggling in the depth department. It's crazy. It was so once again in the offseason, we're so focused on the offensive line. We noted this in the preseason. It's just like, who are the guys to look at as far as young guys to make the roster and to kind of be depth pieces for these older guys if something happened. There wasn't. Yeah. And we noted that, and we kind of brushed over it because we're like, it's the defense. They'll figure it out. They always do. We've got big issues here on the offensive line, which wasn't false. But yeah, I mean, the Ravens, they've made some moves before, I think, with the defensive line. We'll see if Chris Wormley has anything left in the tank. We'll see about, I keep forgetting his name. And you just mentioned him, the other defensive lineman.
Tulopo, whatever.
Tulopo, yeah.
Tulopo, yeah.
And the Ravens, we'll see. Do they have another? Are they going to find another LJ Fort, another guy off the street? What was it back in 2019? They signed that guy who played for the Bengals forever, Pecco, Diontae Pecco. He filled in for defensive line depth adequately down the stretch there. Now, granted, that team was in a much better situation, that position group, so he didn't have to do as much. So, I mean, look, I think that they're aware. They have to be aware, and we've seen them pull this off before. Sometimes with big moves like Roquan, sometimes with smaller moves like Pecco, And I would be shocked if we don't see them, make a move with someone. Is it a trade? Is it signing someone who's currently, not on a team? They're going to bring someone in. It's just a question of what's the highest quality player they're going to be able to get at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, of the position groups right now, interior defensive line, absolutely. We if there was another injury there, like, we wouldn't even have enough guys to be able to play it. Even if you activate all the outside linebackers, like I don't think we want to try and play the race car as like our main defensive package. Like, that's not really going to work. So, secondary, I feel like could be nice, but I feel like if our guys are healthy, we're probably okay. Obviously, like, situation right now, defense, not great. Everyone's talking about it. We know. But in terms of having the pieces that we think could work out long term, like, I still mostly am okay. Safety's a little iffy, but corners and stuff like that, like, I feel like we're probably okay. But yeah, interior line, Alec, I feel like your worst fears were realized.
I hate this. I hate it so much.
Yeah.
Like,
you shouldn't have brought it up, man. You shouldn't have brought it up.
Well, it's funny because, like, I was more so like, you don't want to have 4, like, that's a bad idea. And then, like, the injuries started piling up in the last game. And I was like, oh man, this is like actually my worst nightmare. And they had 5. It's just that they had 2 bang. Tupu is how you say it, I think. It's Tupou. He played with the Bengals for over 6 seasons, so we know him kind of well from there. But the other thing I wanted to mention too, I saw this. I think it was a tweet from the UK Ravens. They said the only person that can pass rush is Kyle Hamilton. The only person that can play secondary is Kyle Hamilton. We only have one Kyle Hamilton. And then the word on the street is, what if we went back to committed nickel, right? And then therefore, now we have Millett available and Darius Washington. They play slot. You throw Hamilton in the back end. He cleans up some of the coverage things. Then you have another run stopper with Simpson on the field. So it's an interesting idea to maybe do more nickel. Kind of go back to that scheme like we were doing last year, because we haven't been doing as much of that this year. So something to keep an eye out on and see how they continue to adjust and tweak this defense so that it doesn't give up yards so easily.
Yeah, definitely. And I think ultimately that's probably going to be the best path forward for them. Could they trade for a safety? Sure, but part of me wonders if you're just going to run into the same issues that you currently are. I mean, Marcus Williams is a very talented player, and he's struggling right now. I mean, is that the scheme? Is that something else? It's hard to tell, but I think that right now the best way to fix the defense is get some more defensive linemen in there so you can have a rotation, keep guys fresh, not have Matabike and company, out there for way more snaps than you usually would. And then play around with the scheme, get guys in the best positions where they can be, most effective. And that's probably the best case scenario you can have going forward. Is it going to work? I mean, we'll just have to see, but I think that's the best we can hope for.
Well, that's it for us. We just wanted to have this conversation about the trade deadline and Diontae Johnson joining the team. Feel free to let us know in the comments what you think about Diontae Johnson. You can talk to us on Twitter @OneWinningPod, Threads @OneWinningPod, and on YouTube @OneWinningPod. You can email us too if you really feel like it. We got a spam email today. That was pretty cool. I don't know if you saw that, guys. Like, you want to do some brand endorsements? I was like, I don't think that's real. hit me up on Telegram.
I did see that. Yes, I did.
Yeah, let's not do that. But anyways, go vote, and we'll talk to you next week. Go Ravens.